What have we seen in the last year, 2008, since our last meeting? We'll start, as we always do, with the drugs. I'm happy to say that I think for the FDA, it's been what I would call a banner year, a remarkable year, really. I'll start on the drug side, and you can see there a total of 10 relevant and novel NDA BLAs. If you look at sort of how the FDA was doing in 6-year blocks over time, we did this last year, you saw a relative slowdown, which some of us thought was perhaps due to the less than streamlined flow or decision flow that was in the agency at the time, and the fact that some of the decisions, many of them were not made directly by the ophthalmology team. Good news is that Dr. Gottlieb has, through the official government press release known as Tweet, he has said that there is going to be a new division of ophthalmology that still needs to be ratified, but that I think is a great turn of events for us and for the ophthalmic group at FDA. And since last January, Dr. Chambers himself has had a sort of informal, streamlined reporting to the Office of New Drugs, and so that I want to believe has helped, and the numbers would support that. If you look at the total number of original NDA BLAs in blue, you can see they've been up, but ophthalmology has been up remarkably. I don't know that there's ever been a year with 9. If there has been, it's only been 1 or 2 in the past 30 or so years. So this is the first time that I've had to put these 9 novel approvals on 2 slides as this, and you'll get them. You can read through them as with all my slides. But I do want to mention some of these approvals. First, Vyzulta, which is a prostaglandin-type agent. The numbers would suggest that it's perhaps numerically better than some of the other prostaglandins, but it's great to have this added to the armamentarium. Rhopressa, the first truly new drug class in glaucoma in a couple decades, and excited to see this out, and even perhaps more excited to see the combination product, Rocklatan, that is still investigational, but we'll know in March whether that gets approved and then can, again, join our patients to treat this disease. EyePoint had the approval of its bioerodible Verisome technology. This is placed behind the iris at the end of surgery, and it really is intended to replace drops in the post-op period. And it had a second approval, as you can see, for a non-infectious uveitis, an implant that appears to last at least 12 months. It's not quite clear how long it lasts, but another great addition for those patients with inflammation. And Kala has its approval of the mucus-penetrating peptide technology, also for postoperative inflammation, taking from 4 times a day to twice a day. This one, to me, was a very interesting one, and I was unaware of it, but was happy to see it approved as the recombinant nerve growth factor for neurotrophic keratitis. If you've taken care of these patients, you know it's a huge problem to get these corneas to heal, and I think the deltas on the treated and untreated were very impressive in this trial. I mentioned 10, but only showed 9. This is the 10th that came out of CBER, but CDER was heavily involved, and this is Luxturna, which in my view was truly transformative. It was really the first gene therapy approved for an inherited disease in medicine. I think a huge turning point. And if you follow this space, you know that gene therapy is active generally. It's particularly active in ophthalmology. I have here about 16 or 17 companies, but I'm sure there are another 16 that I'm fully unaware of. Francis Collins and Scott Gottlieb wrote in the New England Journal that the FDA has 700 active INDs for gene therapy, 700. I find that just overwhelming. And the public markets like it too. If you look here at the broad indices, S&P, NASDAQ in gray, OIS index in blue, and then all the yellow are companies clustered by the sort of technology. And you can see gene therapy is valued at a 200% premium over the markets in this 12-month period that we've followed. So the world likes gene therapy. It's come of age. Some other milestones, and I apologize if I won't touch on your particular therapeutic area of interest. There's a lot to cover, and I can only highlight so much. But I'll start with dry eye for a couple reasons. First, it's a big market. 300 million people globally affected. You can see in blue that most are untreated, particularly outside the US. If you look at sales, Restasis is in blue. It was a $1.5 billion product at its peak. It will decrease as we get generics. But you can see the first new entrant, Xiidra, I've shown 2 estimates from analysts, one Stifel, one Bernstein, is going to be a $500 million to $1 billion drug depending on who you read. So it continues to be a big and very relevant market, and I think there's a lot that's untapped. So what's happened in that space? We have for the submission of an NDA for loteprednol by Kala. This is to treat exacerbations, essentially, in dry eye. It's intended for interim use. We have a number of companies that have shown very promising phase 2 data. Topivert, which is a multi-kinase inhibitor, has symptom and sign efficacy data. Aldera, which is an aldehyde scavenging agent, has symptom and sign data for phase 2. And Oyster Point, when I put this talk together, had, I think, particularly compelling symptom and sign data for their nicotinic acetylcholine agonist and delivered intranasally. And just in the last couple of days, I think we'll hear from Jeff now that they have, yet again, a couple additional phase 2 trial positives. So this is, in my opinion, particularly promising in the space. And MC2 has a novel formulation of cyclosporin with positive data. So go back one for me, please. If you would, reverse one. I guess we can't do that. So what I showed on the last slide was that it's a very busy roadmap. There are literally 36 companies in the dry eye space that are active and advancing. And to make the point, it's going to become a very complex and competitive market. And just how that sort of falls out, I think, is hard to predict. I'm going to turn now to what some people would say is the holy grail in ophthalmology. I think if you're a general ophthalmologist, and particularly if you're a patient, it surely is. And that is the pharmacotherapies for refractive errors. And I'm going to touch on two here. First is pharmacotherapy for presbyopia. Presbyopia is a mega market. There are at least 2 billion people around the world who have presbyopia, and it's increasing as the population around the world is getting older, and as what they do is more vision dependent. Education increases, near work increases. The sort of the vanguard here was Encore Vision, since acquired by Novartis, that showed this improvement in near vision with their topical agent, phase 1/2. It's hard sometimes once these companies get acquired to follow what's happening inside the walls of a large company like Novartis. But my understanding is that this drug is now being reformulated to improve it and will re-enter the clinic in the not too distant future. Allergan, you may know, has been looking at combination product of low-dose pilocarpine and another agent to get a pinhole effect. This was the first data, in fact, the only data they reported some time ago. And you can see here that pilocarpine was better than the two together, but since then, they've done 2 additional phase 2 trials, so they must have seen something that was, I think, in addition to that pilocarpine. They've not reported those results yet, but let's assume they're promising. Orasis, which is an Israel-based company, has reported very, I think, suggestive and interesting data with a topical approach, again, looking for a pinhole effect. And Presbyopia Therapies, similarly, has reported the use of an agent that produces a pinhole effect and can improve near vision. So we're getting, on the presbyopia side, with the pinhole effect, we have now at least 3 companies that are going after that approach for that indication. I think it's worth mentioning, too, although it's a bit earlier, it's preclinical. Viewpoint Therapeutics has what would be a first-in-class disaggregator of crystalline, and nominally that's to reverse cataract opacification. But it could also perhaps soften the lens, and so that may have a presbyopia application down the road, to be seen. The other mega class to talk about is myopia, and we all recognize that myopia, particularly high myopia, is associated with lots of complications. And if presbyopia was a mega market, this is twice that and growing. You can see it's growing, predicted to be 5 billion myopes by 2050. We have very, very intriguing data out of many centers, but particularly Asia and Singapore, that suggests that low-dose atropine can slow the progression of myopia from presumably low to pathologic or high myopia. There are some unknowns here. What's the appropriate concentration, how often to give it, and whether it reverses when you stop, and how long you need to treat, et cetera, et cetera. So there are now 3 companies at least that are going after this indication, the use of low-dose atropine for myopia. Nevicar is one. They're in stealth mode, so I took all this information off of clinicaltrials.gov. Sidnexis, another company that's going into phase 3 with low-dose atropine, and Inovia with their proprietary applicator, the micropine, which sprays the microdose directly onto the ocular surface. So all 3 of these are either in or going into phase 3, and we hope that in the not too distant future we'll have 1 or more drugs available for that condition. What about wet AMD? We spent a lot of time talking about that at previous meetings. This is a mature field, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We do have brolucizumab, which perhaps has less frequent dosing. We We had the very exciting data with the port delivery system, which showed that for the highest dose, up to 80% of patients could go 6 months without a refill. So we're really getting to the point where we're starting to get to long-term durability for these agents. Gray bug vision is in phase 1/2, and we hope by the end of the year we'll have data that speaks to its kinase inhibitor in a sort of increased durability application. And we saw, I think, very exciting data from REGENXBIO with the delivery of what is essentially a Fab with an AAV8 to get to sustained delivery. And once the dosing is correct, perhaps even I use the word loosely, but a cure, or at least a long-term treatment without frequent retreatments for this condition. There is also the bispecific that Roche Genentech are developing, and this particular agent, faricimab, is now advancing into phase 3 for both this and for DME. Opthea, when you talk about add-on therapy or combination, Opthea is looking at their anti-VEGF CD to be used together with anti-VEGF-A. We expect to have those results perhaps in 2019. And Panoptica is pursuing, as it has been, the topical application of VEGF inhibition. What about DME? I mentioned faricimab. This is going forward both for AMD and DME. Much of the data related to these more advanced agents now we'll learn in the main meeting on Subspecialty Day. And the companies are quite sort of careful about what they release and when they release it, so I would encourage you to go to those presentations to hear the most. Allegro has filed, or is about to file, I'm not quite sure where they are, an S1, and hopes to take this company public with their first-in-class integrin inhibitor for anti-VEGF non-responders. And Erpio, another completely novel indication, diabetic, with this class of molecule, Tie2 activators, diabetic retinopathy. I think all this is sort of interesting and active and moving forward. On the device side, again, a great year for the device side. You can see here the number of 510Ks, PMAs, et cetera. 2.5% of the total 510Ks at the FDA. The review times are down 50% on the 510K side, and yet the number is strong, as it is with PMAs at 7, again, decreased review times. This is the formal list of PMA approvals, and I'll just mention a couple. The Custom Flex is an intraocular artificial iris for patients who have either iris damage or aniridia. Very high patient satisfaction rate, so I think great for that relatively small group of patients with that condition. Glaukos' micro-bypass system was approved. This is in putting in 2 eye stents at the 3 clock hour separation, as you can see. And Ivantis microstent was also improved, another trabecular meshwork approach. The big news in the space was the voluntary withdrawal of the CyPass, and I was speaking with Dr. Edelman this morning, and she said a press release came out yesterday that speaks to this. I have not seen it, but does provide additional information on why this was done and its implication for the space in general, which she believes, if I paraphrase, is still positive. She doesn't want people to overreact to this particular withdrawal. There are some agents that are still in development, in focus from Santen. That trial is fully enrolled, and the iStent Super, which would be another suprachoroidal approach to treating this condition. And so I remain bullish on MIGS. You can see it's a big market and growing. There were 2 de novo approvals on the device side. One was sort of a new claim, a symptom claim for the Oculeave device. And this one, I think, is really very special, and that is the IDX first approval of an autonomous AI-based diagnosis for diabetic retinopathy. In case you've been asleep, AI is a big deal, and it's going to totally transform our world. So you'll remember this approval. We'll all remember it in years to come. It'll be very, very important. And as with the drug side, the device side is also going through reorgs to streamline the process, 7 to 4 offices, et cetera. We'll have to see how this all plays out over time. The NEI was up a bit on its funding, as in years past, which is a good thing. Venture remains strong, particularly on the biotech side. And ophthalmology is particularly strong. This year, we've had $718 million going to ophthalmology. It's really a record-breaking year for ophthalmology, which is a great thing. You can see in yellow the devices are picking back up, which I was very happy to see. 35 public companies in ophthalmology, about 2/3 of which are biotech. The index is tracking to major indices, so also good. The overall sector sentiment is about neutral. And you can see that the IPO market remains strong, both initial offerings and follow-ons. I personally like to follow the yield curve as a predictor of recession and the window closing and market slowdown. You can see we've been creeping towards zero, or the inversion point, for a number of years now, but if this predicts future, we still have a year or two before we could expect a recession. On the M&A side, biotech remains strong in blue. You can see here that devices, there are fewer, but let's hope that that picks back up. There have been plenty in ophthalmology that we all know. Now we have 4 OIS meetings. We have 3 that you've all known about, and we're introducing SECO, which will be at the optometry meeting in New Orleans. So please join us if you're there. We have many bands of information that you can tap into and follow things. We're particularly proud of the new magazine, OIS Press. It's on the table, it's in the back. Take a look at it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't like it, let me know, and I'll try to let the team know gently. Please stay on time. It's very important for us to meet our goals that we all stay on time. Thank you.